International students have been really important in my life for a long time because we moved to University Village, which was where all the university students that were internationals and their families lived. And so when I moved to Iowa, it was not very white. I had friends who were from South Korea and Mongolia and Ethiopia and Kenya and Brazil and Colombia, right? I had all these friends who were moving to a new place just like me. And I remember when we started, we had no furniture. Everything we bought at Walmart, and it was foldable, you know what I'm talking about? Foldable table, foldable chairs. We slept on air mattress in our rooms. And we had met two friends, a couple, and they were funky. They were moved and shaped by belief. And it's a funky belief. It's the belief that the movement that they were a part of included every tribe, every tongue, every nation, every people. And so they were moved to hospitality. And so one day I come back from school and our house is just filled with furniture. They gave us their very own furniture. They told us it looked better in our house. What does welcoming the stranger look like? You know? And so then I would grow up as a Puerto Rican living in Iowa and then Minnesota. But when I was around 5th grade, we went to a Spanish church in St. Paul. Everyone spoke Spanish, lots of countries in South and Central America. And when I was in 5th grade, I learned something that shocked me. I learned that at home, I had a very small piece of paper. It was around 3 inches by 1 inch. And on that piece of paper, there were 9 digits that my mom wanted me to memorize for some reason. And I lived somehow in a society that said because I had that little piece of paper, I mattered more than those who didn't. I woke up to the reality that because I had a piece of paper in a folder, in a drawer, or a box, that somehow I lived in a society that said that my life mattered and those who didn't have that piece of paper didn't. Right. And I had another piece of paper that was folded up and it said where I was born and when and what hospital. And because it said Puerto Rico and not Mexico, because it said Puerto Rico and not Colombia, somehow I had more rights, somehow I had more protections, somehow I had more value and worth than other children of God. And I learned in that Spanish church that I had privilege. There's some of you here that know what it's like to move somewhere new and not know the language and not know the culture. You're welcome here. God loves you here. There is an unconditional and inexhaustible love that is for you, regardless of what you believe, regardless of your sexual orientation, regardless of your gender identity, regardless of your ethnicity, race, or national origin. You matter. And then there are some of you in this room that know what it's like to have a little card with 9 digits on it, and know what it's like to have a little certificate. And somehow you didn't know this, but somehow your life matters more in a world, in a system, in a structure that is unjust. There are 3 ways that we can see our immigrant neighbors. The first way we can see our immigrant neighbors is we can see them as less. We can see them as less than us, less than me, less than you, less than human. And anytime we do that, it's not just incorrect, it's not just wrong, I believe it's sin. Anytime we see a child of God as less than human, as less than you, as less than me, we sin. And I know that there are some people that wish they could get on stage and say some of these things, but can't because of their immigration status, whether they're undocumented in this room, and there are undocumented people in this room, whether they're refugees or seeking asylum, whether they're on R1 visa or an F1 visa as a student or religious leader, or whether they're a permanent resident. There are people in this room that know in their hearts that what ICE is doing in our communities is wrong. Yes. It's sin. Yes. It's evil. Yes. But the problem is, the systems and the structures that we see today are silencing the very people they are oppressing. So we do a storytelling night every semester. Last semester we did Trans Stories Are Sacred. It was beautiful if you were there. But I'll be honest with you, this is the hardest storytelling night I ever did. Because we had to decide to make people safe as a first priority, and that meant that the people that get up on the stage that are immigrants are going to be US citizens now. They're people who have gone through the immigration process, sometimes 9 years, sometimes 20 years, right? People who have been through the immigration process and can tell you about it. But they're US citizens. Everyone on the stage is going to be a US citizen for the safety of everyone here involved. But what does it tell you? That we can't just pass the mic to some of our family members, some of our community members, because it would cause them harm. Because this system and these structures would take away their legal status, would harm them, would detain or deport them just for saying their truth, just for sharing their story. And so tonight we're really creative. Like, what we did is we asked the immigrants in our lives, in our families, in our friend groups, in our communities, we asked them, if you could tell, as an immigrant, if you could tell the world one thing, what would it be? As an immigrant, what do you wish the world would understand? And we collected those and we made videos out of those responses, read by our student leaders who are US citizens. And here's what I need you to know. These quotes and these videos and these stories you're going to see tonight, they're not written by ChatGPT. They're not somewhere where we went and Googled really cool immigration stories. They were written by some of the people who are in this room. But they can't get up here and say their name. That's how bad things are right now. And so when you hear a story, I want you to clap like they're on stage, okay? So let me hear you clap. Let's clap. If we could open up more seating for people, that would be great. But I want you to know that these stories are real. They're from people in this room. They're from people in our lives, in our community, right in our networks, right in our city. And the last thing I'll say is, my last time we did a storytelling night, Trans Stories Are Sacred, my husband and I were doing our immigration process. And we had our citizenship interview. And can I just be honest, it went really, really bad. Our previous interview had been 30 minutes. This one was an hour and a half. Our previous one was very formal and polite. This one was aggressive and negative. And I remember sitting in the USCIS lobby, waiting for an hour and 10 minutes because they separated us for an hour and 10 minutes. And I just wondered, what does welcome look like? What does welcome look like? There's 3 ways we can see our immigrant neighbors. We can see them as less. Number 2, we can see them as equals, right? We can see them as we see ourselves. We see that in the Old Testament where it says, you shall treat the foreigner as the native born, right? If I went to Congress and I submitted a law that we will treat the foreigner as the native born, it would not pass Congress. It would be described as left and woke, radical and progressive. Which begs the question, you think the book of Leviticus is woke? You think the book of Leviticus is radical and left? Which begs another question, why do you think that the book of Leviticus, written thousands of years ago, is more advanced morally and spiritually than the United States is right now? Why is that? And we can look at the New Testament that says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You shall love your immigrant neighbor, but it says as yourself, which is important, which a lot of you may not know this, but love requires equality. Love always requires equality. Love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the first 2 levels, but I'm here to help us get to the 3rd level. We can see immigrants as less, we can see immigrants as equals, and we can see God in our immigrant neighbors. Because Jesus tells us that how we treat the immigrants is how we treat him. And so I remember sitting in that USCIS lobby and thinking, I wonder how many times Jesus visits this office. I wonder where Jesus parks. I wonder if he gets there an hour early because he's scared to be a minute late. I wonder if he worries. I wonder if he prays for that application to go through. I wonder how he feels like when he goes up the elevator and he sees that big seal of USCIS. I wonder what happens when he's in the security line and someone speaks in a language he doesn't understand and then gets mad at him for not understanding a language he doesn't understand. I wonder how he feels like when he sits down waiting on a number to decide whether he can stay or go, whether he can be deported or detained, whether it's okay or not. I wonder what Jesus feels like. How many times he goes into that office every single day. How we treat our immigrant neighbors is how we treat God. So tonight, we have an opportunity to not just see immigrants as less than, and not even to see immigrants as our equals, though they are, but to see God in these stories, in these quotes, in these videos, in these live storytellers, in these panels, in these moments. What if you could leave here tonight seeing something sacred, something holy, something divine, not in anything, not in the graphics, not in the seats, not in the music, but in people made in the image of God just like you. Could we do that today? Yes. Amen.